Today we're doing a repair on a Ford Territory. It's a 2007 model and it's got the 4-speed 93LE transmission in it. It appears to, it came in Limp mode, which is basically third gear, and there's obviously an electrical problem somewhere there going to the transmission. So we're going to put a scanner on it and see if we can get a code out of it and go from there. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult getting a code out of the vehicle because he's got one of these interlock devices. But we'll see how we go. And he's got these other codes. Don't know what's going on here. There's a whole heap of codes. And there's the fault code for the transmission. Got a shift solenoid. Now I'm just going to check the oil level in it. With these you check the oil level when they're at operating temperature and with the motor off. It should be just coming out of that plug there. It just seems a little bit oily around the extension housing seal. And of a leak at the front here somewhere, but that looks like it's engine oil. The O-ring on these servos covers leaks sometimes, so you can check under there as well. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a wire brush as well, and we're going to drop the pan on it. I'm going to remove this we'll move it out of the way anyway, this cross member. I'm just going to take 1, 2, 3 bolts off and loosen this one, and I'll just swing it out of the way there. There is oil there, a little bit low, but it's not that low to cause this problem. As usual, I'm going to just remove the rear some bolts. And I haven't even taken these off yet or loosened them. And we're just going to let that drain out, and then I'll loosen these and that'll let a bit more oil out. Speed it along a little bit. You can see the oil's pretty dark and it hasn't been serviced for a while, and the magnet is completely covered, so that magnet's not going to be working anymore, and what happens is attracted to the solenoids. So that's actually the fault code that we've got. The problem is that all the solenoids are probably contaminated. When we drop the valve body, we can only replace 6 solenoids, and there's one that's located up in the pump for the torque converter clutch, so you need to replace or remove the transmission to get to that one. Anyway, we're going to just take the filter off now and just inspect those solenoids. To take the clip off, it's just a little bit of spring steel there. You just pop it off here. Just be careful because that filter can drop out sometimes, so just make sure that the oil's not too hot. If it does come down on you, it's not going to burn you. There we go. And there now we can see the solenoid's a little bit better there. If you have a look on the printing there, it actually tells you which solenoids are what. So solenoid D is the one that there's a fault code with, but we're going to actually remove all of them and just inspect, just test them. Now the fault code on this is a solenoid D. Now I suppose what that actually means is your S4 solenoid. Your S4 is actually this one here, and that's for your band apply regulator solenoid. But in this situation, because of how much muck's in there, the customers opted to replace all the solenoids in it. They're probably all contaminated anyway, and hopefully get more life out of it. So when I get it out, I'll probably just test it just to see if it's locking up or if it's got high or low resistance. And we're also going to replace the pressure control solenoid. So you've got the 2 shift solenoids, clutch apply regulator solenoid, band apply regulator solenoid, and your S6 solenoid up the front there. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pop these little clips off. Now, all those clips are very brittle in this transmission, so just try and do your best and not break them. The clips are important, but if you do break them, just make sure that the little spade terminals are tight on the other solenoids when you put them back on. Still got this one over here to take off. And I've actually managed to break all the clips. They're very, very brittle. It's going to break as well. There we go. We just remove all the bolts. We'll take this one off because it's got the detent on the selector valve, and that's a T40. The rest of them are T30s, and that whole valve body will just drop down. Now I've just got to take this selector off just so I can move that manual shaft in, because there's a bolt underneath that selector shaft. I'll just take that out, and then I'll take the selector linkage off, and then we can just slide that forward a bit more just to gain access there. Remove the selector off, and then you can see we can just slide that in. There's the other little T30 there, just under that selector. Pain in the bum, but you got to do it. And I think I've loosened them all. Just going to leave one in the center there. Let's see it from this angle. And if you're doing this on the ground, it's probably a good idea to just let it drain a little bit. Just makes it less messy. It's still a bit hot. So be careful. I'm gonna rush and get this job out before the long weekend. There we go. There she blows. Now, while you had that out, it would be possible to do a air pressure test on it, and you can also, because these are preset now, they used to have band adjustment on the external side of the transmission. Now they're just shimmed up with these little shims, if you can see that. So you could actually do a band adjustment as well if you wanted to. Okay, we've got the valve body out here, and I'm just going to take out the solenoids one by one and just test them, or the shift solenoids anyway. I'd say the S4, which is this one, which is solenoid D, is possibly playing up, but I'll check the other ones as well. Now, another thing just to note before you pull this apart is the angle of where the terminals come out. So just so you're able to get the plug back in properly, just make a note which angle the plugs are facing as you change them as well. You don't want the wiring to be hitting the pan or rubbing on something, so just another little thing to keep an eye on. Now, this is a test on the solenoids cold. They will fail when they warm up, so this is just an idea just to see what we get. We've got the S4 28.7 ohms, 29.3, 28.8, 28.6, and the S6 28.7. So they're all sort of within range, but I'd say one of them's failing when it warms up. Okay, I've just taken off that. And now we're putting a Roco solenoid in. And that one was the S4. We'll do the S1 now. S3, S2 and S6. So I'll just go through and swap all them. Grab another Roco one, and what I do is I just put the little cover in the same spot, or the little clip. That way the angle will be pretty much the same. Now you might be able to see the S4 says bar, this one says car. Bar stands for band apply regulator, car is clutch apply regulator. So that's the one we're doing now, the S3. That's the clutch apply regulator. And again, I'll get the Rico one and just try and put the bracket on in the same spot. Just makes it a little bit easier. And the S2, which is a 2-3 shift solenoid. And finally the S6, which is like a damper solenoid. Now if the S7 solenoid is playing up, the one that's in the torque in the pump for the torque converter clutch, then all this works for nothing. We've got to actually take the transmission right out to replace that one. Now we'll just tighten all those up. I haven't done the S5, which is the pressure control solenoid, and this one you can't actually mix up the angle because there's a little bracket on it. That actually locates it. And we also check that spring, sometimes they're known to break. And there's the reconditioned S5 solenoid. Okay, I'm going to do all those up, and I'm also going to just nip all these up as well, just to make sure that they're not leaking or anything like that. They all look pretty tight. And in here there's quite a bit of that fine metal. It's actually quite coarse in there. So I'll just clean that out as well as best as I can. Clean that out more for so it doesn't go in those holes when I'm putting it back together. That pressure port. Now I've tightened all the solenoids up, and I'm just going to flip the valve body over and just push out that filter seal there. It's just a lot easier to knock out while the valve body's out. There you go. Always be careful that you don't damage the housing. These valves look like they're shuttling okay. Alright, we can put that back on now. Now important, you've got that little Z-link there. Don't forget to put that in properly as well on the manual shaft. It'll be a little bit hard to see, so I can't get in there and work around the camera, so that's the only trick to it. And I'll put it on and then just put one bolt in and then another, maybe the two easier ones to put on, and then we'll be able to just hold it up and put the rest of the bolts in and tighten her up. Okay, we've got the little Z-link there. A noisy truck. We've got the bolts and everything ready. Just handy so we can just not have to reach for it when we're struggling when they're holding up the valve body there. So I'm going to hook up the Z-link onto the manual shaft, and then I'll end up putting the valve body up. There we go. Now I'm just going to put all the bolts in first, just loosely, and then we'll do up the middle, and then we can do up the rest of it. And now if we've put all the solenoids on correctly, hopefully they'll the plugs will go on nice and evenly and they won't be sticking out too much. Make sure you put the seal back on the filter. Just check everything. And when you're putting the pan seal back on, I just like to stretch it a little bit. It'll just fit on a little bit better. And I've deliberately put the magnet up on that hump so it's not flat on the bottom, so it can work underneath as well. And I've added a little neodymium magnet on it as well. I've put it on that groove there, so it can work underneath as well. I've put them towards the rear of the transmission because that's where the cooling line's returning the oil or the fluid. So, but it doesn't really matter, it circulates everywhere. So anyway, we've put a new filter on, double checked everything, and now we can put the pan back on. Okay, we've put that cross member back on. And we're going to top it up with the APF universal oil, which covers the LE or TQ95 application. So I've filled it up with oil till it's just coming out. I'm going to climb up now and just give it a run for a moment. Just start it up for a moment, and then we'll turn the engine off, come back down, fill it up again, and then we can warm it up, go through the gears, or go for a run. And with these, you don't have the motor running when you check it. It's got to be sitting for about half an hour when it's at operating temperature, and then it's just going to be coming out of that plug there. So we're just going to go ahead and do that now. There we go, just back from a test run. Not in limp mode, changing through the gears perfectly. So we're just going to let it sit for a little while till it gets to about 50 degrees, and check the oil level again with the motor not running. So we'll just see what temperature the oil's at now. And there we go, we're on 82 degrees, so we're just going to let it sit for about half an hour and check that oil level. Probably even longer than half an hour till it gets to about 50 degrees. Anyway, we're just going to loosen that plug when it gets down to that temperature, and if it's overfilled we'll just let it drain out. If it's underfilled we'll just top it up. And that's the job done. Hope you've learnt how to possibly replace solenoids in your BTR 4-speed. Thank you for watching.